So today you join me in Devizes. I'm at the top of Caen Hill, which is famous for a flight of locks, which I'm going to take a walk along later. Here we're at the Jubilee Wood Plantation. It's a fairly recent plantation, I think it's 2010. And so lots of trees are growing down there, lots of walks around it. But I've got a viewpoint here looking over the wonderful Wiltshire landscape. Give you a view of that. Now I'm going to make my way to the bottom of Caen Hill, flight of locks, and we're going to explore that. So it's nice to have some information boards available for our walk. So I've made the walk down to Foxhangers. There is a marina down here which has been built in recent years to service the ever-growing number of narrowboats that we have on the waterway here. And then we turn around, we're now coming just here to the first lock on the flight going up Caen Hill. So this counts here, we've got the sign there. And like all good locks, they all leak a bit. I've never seen any that don't leak somewhat as you walk past them. So let's start our journey up the hill, this lovely old bridge. I'm not going to record every step of the way, but I'll show you each of the locks that we come to, anything interesting that we find, and tell you a little bit about Canal and anything else that we can find for you. So I'm just going to look back from this first lock and you'll see the archway in the bridge there. That's interesting because that used to allow a tramway to pass underneath it, and that's the remains of the tramway really, are the special arches in the bridges where the tram used to go. That's 1801 to about 1810 until this section of the canal was opened. Built by John Rennie, famous canal engineer, and the tramway used to service between Devizes and down here at Foxhangers, which is more level ground, and then you could take goods either from there onwards, outwards, or bring them up the hill using the tramway into Devizes. Let's take this plant and then compare it with another one. They look very similar, but this one is hemlock, the other cow parsley. Hemlock is Britain's most dangerous plant, so don't play around with that or let your dog get anywhere near it, or other pets, because it is deadly, compared to good old cow parsley, which is edible. So that can cause a bit of a problem if you go foraging and think you know what you're doing. The difference really is just in those clusters of flowers, the way they look. As you can see again here, you have a different flower, slightly different stem as well, little patches on the stem if we were close up to it, of the hemlock. So be very careful. So we've passed our first lock. There are 29 locks in total. It is a day's work for a boater to get from the bottom to the top, or vice versa, and there's a lot of water required. Water can be pumped back up quite quickly from Foxhangers, the equivalent of a lock full every 11 minutes if necessary, to manage the water supply. Canals aren't very deep, apart from the locks, the actual canal sections tend to be about 4 feet deep, so a narrow boat doesn't have a huge draft for that reason, but if the water does drop they can bottom and get stuck, so it is important that the water is managed. If it rains heavily, there are runoff zones that the water can drain into local streams. So we'll pause a second and get to the next lock. So we have a little footbridge to get across the canal here as well. And if you want to do a bit of self-catering camping, it is available. just go onto the footbridge, give you a view. We do get a lot of cyclists along here. This is cycle route number 4 in the National Cycle Network. It goes from Bristol to London. The canal was built to go from Bristol to Reading, and then you can get on the River Thames and go on into London that way. Just look back the way we've come from, and then we'll carry on. So let's make our way to the next lock for you. And as we approach this next flight of lock, it's interesting to note that these flights were gaslit to allow the narrowboats to traverse them, and the gas lighting was in operation from the years, I've got it written down here somewhere, we go, yeah, between 1829 and 1843. No lights today, but if anybody do want to come through at night, obviously barges, or narrowboats we should call them, do have their own lighting systems if they should wish to use them. You see, a lot of brickwork was required, a lot of materials, and wherever possible that was done locally. So along this section, just further down behind me, I believe it was a brickworks where the bricks could be made and used along the canal here. So there's our next flight. Now the numbers on the flights is the numbering system all the way from Bristol right through to the end of the canal. The same with bridges, they're all given a number from what is essentially regarded as the starting point until the final point. Let's go on top a minute. Because such a lot of water is used by these huge holding ponds that you find as well as a good place to turn around if someone wants to give up and turn around. They hold a lot of water. These devices are operated by a crank that open the paddles that let the water out to fill up the lock below to bring it to the same level. And here's our next lock. When we get to the steep part of the hill, of course, they come thick and fast on the major part of what we regard as Caen Hill. The Devizes does sit on top of a hill. So we have lock number 25. Nice place to have your house there, isn't it? It's nice to see the heron along here as well doing his fishing. I've seen him on my walk down. I'll pop in a bit of footage for you later on, unless we see him again on the way. Obviously, over time the canal fell into disrepair and it was finally reopened. I think it was around the 1990s the whole thing was renovated and reopened. The Canal and River Trust. Now this is interesting. fishing in spires. That local anglers call this pond spires because it is surrounded with tall phragmites reed. You can see their feathery heads from late summer onward. Reed beds provide shelter for endangered water voles and nesting sites for reed and sedge warblers. This is one of only 2 stretches of phragmites in the area. They're using this fencing to protect the area where reed bed has been lost due to bank damage. So there you go. You can see the phragmites reed over there, all along the bank. It's very nice, isn't it? And here's some, a little bit closer now, blowing in the wind. It's a hot day, but it is nice and breezy. That's beautiful. Some more hemlock there, compared to cow parsley. Quite a difference when you look at it, if you study it. The reason I'm talking about that today so much is it was actually on the television news this morning about the dangers of hemlock, especially for your dog. So our next lock. Number 26. So there's a bit of wind. I've got the muffler on the microphone, but sometimes that doesn't prevent the wind if it hits it at the wrong angle. And then we get a nice view of this wide body of water here in the canal. It allows barges to queue up as well if necessary. And the water is still leaking as it does. There you go. We'll walk our way up to that one next. As we walk towards the next lot, let's take in the view of that house again, and also the lovely weeping willow. Always nice to have a willow tree near water, isn't it? Something about that. So the next lock should be number 27, so let's find out. So here we are at the lock. Let's go and take a look on top. Aha! No boats going up and down at the moment. Getting some water pumped in. It's not rained for a long time actually, so they will be using reserve water. Interesting number on that lock there. The Canal and River Trust do make locks. I have seen a video on them making locks, which is quite interesting. Good old big pieces of oak I believe I used. And nice to see the grips on the floor here. So when you're pushing the beam to open it, you've got somewhere to grip for your toes as you give it a good push. And we do get a fair number of fishermen. Let's look back. It was nice to see the view behind as well as going forward, isn't it? Approaching the bridge. As we come to the bridge, again you can see the archway which would have been for the tramway, which we're now using as the towpath. It's the days when all narrow boats had to be towed by horse. And that lock is very close to the bridge, isn't it? And as you can see, the bridge has also got a number on it. More bridges than locks, for obvious reasons. More roads are going to have to cross the canal. But what I like is the way we use a lot of bricks in those days. Just look at the arches, all that skill. Today it'd be a concrete and steel thing, wouldn't it? A nice little seat to have a rest as well. So this is lock number 28. And now we're beginning to see the steeper rise of the hill and all the locks ahead of us, so we'll take a look at that in a moment. Just go back, bridge 144 and lock 28. And here's the flight. It's quite a feat of early engineering, isn't it, when you think this was in the late 1700s all the way through to the early 1800s. A lot of construction work, a lot of digging by hand. Hence you had the navvies. Many came from Ireland, I believe, to dig the canals by hand and wheelbarrow. Quite a feat, a lot of hard work. Probably not very well paid in many regards, but they're called navvies because they were building navigation system, if you like, all to do with that word, where we get the word navy from and everything else. Looking back again, little house on the bridge there, and we'll cross over this way now, back onto the towpath. You might just be able to hear the traffic on the busy road to my right between these woods. Yeah, lock. So they try and store as much water as possible because it uses a lot of water each time a lock is opened and it drains away. In the early days there were pumping stations which were steam powered, and there are still a few around which have been renovated or restored, and you can now go to open days for those, so look out for those. Some of these locks have been given a nice little label, say. Now, if you've ever been on a narrowboat, you've had a canal experience, let me know in the comments. It'd be great to hear from you and find out if you've enjoyed that and if you've been on this canal. This is the Kennet and Avon Canal. It is nice to see these canals have been restored, and many more are being restored right now. But of course it does take a lot of money, and a lot of it is done by volunteers. If we wanted to, we could now go over into Jubilee Wood from here. We've actually got the sign pointing that way. course the canal's pretty much finished. Some of them around the First World War. I believe this one finished around 1948ish, something like that. The last vessels were going through, and then of course they fall into a state of total disrepair once they stop being used. The canals helped to transport goods to build the railways, and guess what happened? The railways then took over from the canals, so they were part of their own downfall in that sense, but that's progress. Devizes had a railway that closed in the 1960s, and the beaching cuts. I have an interesting story about an incident on the Devizes railway back in the 1800s, so do look out for that one. It's the attempted murder of Emily Lister. And where we went under the last bridge, just to the right was a railway crossing, railway bridge that was, called the Fish Bridge, and that's where the attempted murder took place. It is a fascinating story, that one too, so I discovered it by chance, so I hope you enjoy watching that video. I'll pop a link in the description below and you'll be able to check it out. Devizes is an interesting town, full of history, lots of historic buildings. It's not been too ravaged by modernisation in the centre. There is some, of course, like anywhere, but it's nice to see that there are some very fine old 18th, 19th century buildings. It's also the home to Wadworth Brewery. And that's the home of 6X beer, for those of you that know these things. Let's take a look at this one. So what are we up to now? We're up to number, oh, not there. Ah, there's this down there. Is that 31? More leaky gates. At least having leaky gates when there are no boats passing through does give the water a bit of flow and helps prevent stagnation when not much is happening. Canals can become very stagnant if nothing's moving on them, which then becomes a breeding ground for mosquitoes, doesn't it? And we're still climbing. Number 34. And the wind seems to be picking up speed a little bit. Although we've had lovely weather over the past few weeks, it has been windy. We're being told that a heat wave is on the way, possibly a thunderstorm tomorrow, which may or may not have happened when you watch this video. Weather forecasters don't always get it right, as we know. Number 35. Just love the way that plants start to grow out of every little gap they can find. Goes amazing. You're all the poor gardeners that spend all that time trying to get things to grow in pots and in their gardens, and that fails quite a lot. And yet in those inaccessible places like that, you'd think nothing would grow. Doesn't get watered, doesn't get fed, and look at them growing out of the brickwork. Amazing, isn't it? So we're still climbing up. Say, there's one after the other here, lots of locks. It's a clever system to think how you would just balance water out to take a boat up a hill or down a hill, depending which way you're going, of course. Another lock with a dedication. This is the Peter Lindley Jones lock. So there's a fundraiser, author and friend of the Kennett and Avon Canal Trust. One thing that boaters have to be aware of are there are sills, and if they get hooked on the sill and the water goes down, their boat can get stuck and stay up at one end and go down at the other and then flood. And a number of boaters have found, much to their surprise, that they've lost their boats. There's a little bridge there to cross over as we reach our next lock. As I say, number 37. And let's look back down the hill again. Still see the white house down there by the road bridge that we came underneath. And away we go. Beautiful views in that direction. Don't know how well the camera might pick that up for you, but lovely views over the Wiltshire villages and countryside. We have the Jack Dalby lock. There's a historian and editor of the Butty. It must be their magazine, I think, for the Trust. The recognition of the work that he's done. And we're still climbing. No oxygen masks yet. And the size of the holding pond here. How many millions of gallons that is holding, but quite a bit. Now, if you're not a subscriber yet to Roland's Travels, please just hit that subscribe button. If you'd like to give us a thumbs up or a like, if you want to call that, please do so. Trying to get more and more videos out for you, particularly now we're in the better weather. So this is a Skaggs Foundation lot sponsored, and that's California, USA. Very nice, thank you very much, California. Anyone from California is watching, say hello. Getting through them now, number 40. Just love this old heritage that we have from innovation of industry, transport. Might have seen not too long ago I produced a very short video on Cryche, the tramway museum. Again, lots of work that was done that then the tramways were ripped up. Didn't need them, so called, and then lo and behold they're now putting tramways back into cities. This is lock number 41. Get more people around the top end. They'll walk a few yards down and a few yards back up. So just gone 12 noon. There's a few more people around anyway. And each one of these got these lovely holding ponds. If you ever look on Google Earth, you can see that. Put Caen Hill Devizes. Caen is spelled C-A-E-N, as you'll see in the title. Over there is a car park where I started and parked. Let's move on a bit. So yes, that's a path to the car park there, and we come to the lock number 42 it should be, and indeed it is 42. People love to travel to these locks. They are so important that they've been listed now, so no one can come and dig them up or fill them in, which is more likely. Let's move on. So we're now at lock number 43. So that's not the number of the flights here, it's the total number of locks from Bristol to here at this point. Obviously, wherever possible, engineers would take a canal round the foot of hills, but if you want to service a town that's at the top of a hill, you have to produce a flight of locks. There's a cafeteria up there, we can enjoy a cuppa. So we are at number 44 by the cafeteria. Welcome to Devizes. The tour boats here turning round. Well, we've just got enough room to get round. If you want a little canal trip, you can do. Also from Trowbridge and Bradford, you can get hire boats and things. So we've got some moorings. The boat turns around now. And it's a little bit of a skill. A view of those, and then we'll get to the next lot. Let's go turn around now. Let's move on. So we'll switch back on the recording, having just covered a few feet to this next lock. Begin to level out a little bit as we come to where the main road into Devizes, A361 from Trowbridge Melksham direction comes over the canal, and as we get to lock number 45, we'll move on to the next one and see what's up there. And who says you can't have a garden if you live on the water? approaching our next lock. Imagine the hard work of towing the narrowboats with horses, having to unhitch them, and when they came to tunnels they'd have to walk the barge through the tunnels by laying on planks and then using their feet to push them through. Now you've got a diesel engine, or a few now have electric motors to power them. There's a nice view through the gap there. We're getting quite high up in Devizes now. More of a gentle slope now as we work our way into the town centre. Houses on my right. They have a nice canal view behind. So we'll be able to cross under the main road. And I'll put the camera back on when we get there. That must be one of the tramway arches as well that we're coming to. So let's walk through. One last look behind us before we go under the bridge. And here we go. All that brickwork. Isn't that splendid? And it's still here over 200 years later. Go out to the brightness now, to the dark. Give the camera a chance to adjust to the light. And here's another lock. We are on lock 47 on this system. That very much looks like a lockkeeper's house. Not too sure now. We have a pub, the Black Horse. You can see that's reopened. Did have a pretty bad fire some time ago, and so we'll carry on up this flight of locks. Oh, and the wind's picking up speed along here, so apologies for any wind noise that we've got. There's a fair rise on this section to the next lock. So obviously each one has to be built into the hillside accordingly to how much climb there is for each boat to get across. And I think it's fairly level again for quite a while before the next one. A few yards to the next one, but we'll soon be there, and I'll switch on and record for that one too for you. So we're in Devizes now, coming to the built up areas. Let's see what we can find. So that's lock number 49 we just passed. These nice homes they've built with the views, and then we'll carry on to town, get the properties. Have had the nice gardens all the way down to the canal over the years, the Victorian ones, and obviously mixing in the new ones now as well. We'll see you later. So approaching where the road comes back and crosses the canal again, the A361 into Devizes. To the right, the traffic goes into Devizes, and then we'll look back and that way towards the last lock. Now you can get onto the road using the staircase there. So if you did walk along that way, you'll come to Wadworth Brewery. It's a brewery that still actually uses Shire horses to deliver around the town. They're very well known for that. Sadly, they're trying to move to more modern premises, which will spoil the sort of ambience of the brewery, really, which was very old and just wonderful to go around. But of course, times change. I suppose they need to produce more beer to survive, and that's going to happen. So let's get under this bridge and see what we can find. So before we go under the bridge, there's a sign here that tells about the tramway that vanished. So the horse-drawn tramway transported goods from the barges between Devizes and Foxhangers wharves. It took a while to build the flight of locks to connect the canal at the top to the canal at the bottom. And here's one of the tramway tunnels. It says, look for the grooves in the tunnel walls. These are scars left by the tow ropes of barges pulled by horses. As the boat passed, the tow line would rub, wearing away the stonework. There's the tow rope marks just above the metal plate. So we're now at the Caen Hill locks. Devizes Wharf is further along, but I think I'll stop here at this point. Just go under the bridge a little bit just to get the last view. To the last lock along here. There we go. And then back to the main road. So we're now going to return to the car park. I hope you've enjoyed our trip. It's been great to have you on board for this one. Please do subscribe. Do click the notification bell as well, and you'll know every time I upload a new video. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up too. Let's look at this kind of archway you get on these bridges, which is pretty amazing. So that's lock number 50. Take care, everybody. Hope to see you soon.